hours of the waters as they had before. So, and they could stay home in Memphis and drink very good water, and so people stopped coming. Now, the Raleigh Inn was bought by the Charles B. James Sanatorium Company, which operated the property as a rest home for alcoholics and drug addicts, until the building was destroyed by fire in 1912. Now, some residents of Raleigh hoped to stop any further decline by incorporating the town and electing its own government. It was far enough away from Memphis. The county government was remote. It was in Memphis too. And so they decided it would be a good idea to form our own government. On March the 22nd, 1905, the Tennessee General Assembly passed a bill creating the town of Raleigh, and it authorized the election of a mayor and 5 aldermen. A man named C.C. James was elected mayor, but the government soon languished for lack of interest. In fact, citizens were so indifferent that only 10 voters cast ballots in the January 1907 election. And 4 years later, in 1911, it was decided to abandon it altogether, and a bill was passed in the legislature unincorporating the town of Raleigh. So it didn't last very long as a formal town. But that really didn't matter for Raleigh, because soon after it stopped becoming an official town, Raleigh became a popular place for Memphians looking to escape the city. Real estate developers began to take advantage of that streetcar line that was still operating, and they began to build homes out here. And by the early 1920s, Raleigh was a very popular suburb of Memphis. And like y'all's organization, which I actually am going to talk about in a minute, despite the fact that people were apathetic about their government, they weren't apathetic about their community. In 1922, for example, the Raleigh Improvement Club, which is very similar to this organization, was formed. And it was formed primarily to bring electricity to the area. And the reason why is there was a power plant in Binghamton that was generating power for that part of the county, because that wasn't even part of Memphis at that point. In fact, there was a town of Binghamton, kind of like Raleigh, that existed briefly. And so the Improvement Club organized in order to buy shares so that they could connect the homes in Raleigh with the power plant in Binghamton, which they did. And Raleigh had electric power by the mid-1920s, and which was actually rather rare for county communities outside of the city limits of Memphis at that point. So I mean, Raleigh is to be congratulated for forming this organization and bringing electric power to its people. Now, Raleigh was drawn ever closer to Memphis in 1935 when a federal highway was built by the Works Progress Administration, one of President Roosevelt's New Deal agencies. It ran from the city limits on Jackson Avenue through Raleigh and ended at the Tipton County line. So it was even easier for people to get to Raleigh because you had this brand new federal highway, easier to get even than the streetcar line. And even though the Depression is going on, a lot of people have cars. And so this connects the city and the community of Raleigh ever closer together and makes Raleigh an even more popular destination for people who can afford to buy homes outside of the city and live in the countryside and yet still enjoy the amenities of Memphis. Now, as I said, rudimentary electric service was brought to Raleigh in the 1920s, but it was not until the creation of the Raleigh Utility District in 1953 that a modern water and sewer system was laid for the community. Now, because of the federal highway and the utility district, Raleigh grew dramatically after World War II in the 1950s and 60s. In fact, in 1964, the community grew by over 20%, making Raleigh Shelby County's fastest growing suburb. As one local businessman stated, Raleigh is a beautiful residential terrain with rolling hills and trees, not flat as is much of Shelby's undeveloped property elsewhere. Now, in addition to new homes, a multi-million-dollar shopping mall was developed on 68 acres at the corner of Austin Peay Highway and Yale Road. The Raleigh Springs Mall was completed with the opening of a Goldsmiths department store on August 11, 1971. In September, that old Memphis institution was joined by a Sears and Roebuck Company store, Florsheim Shoes, Park Lane Hosiery, Zale Jewelry, and Spencer Gifts. Now, when Sears opened, they held a ribbon-cutting ceremony for its 176,000 square foot store, which included the raising of the American flag by a Boy Scout Honor Guard and a performance by the Bartlett Junior High Drum and Bugle Corps. A beauty queen then cut the ribbon and the new store was open for business. Now, in the summer of 1968, Memphis leaders took note of Raleigh's explosive growth and saw all the potential tax revenue out here. And on December 31st, 1972, the City Council voted to annex Raleigh. As City Council member Lewis R. Donaldson III explained, these areas are urban in character and need the services which are beyond the scope of the county to provide. Now, apparently most Raleigh residents agreed with that assessment because no one rose in opposition to annexation, which would be quite different today, I would think, in any community in Shelby County. But things were different in 1968. Now, this doesn't mean that the people of Raleigh were not interested in annexation, quite the opposite. The Raleigh-Bartlett Jaycees and its Community and Governmental Affairs Director Donald R. Anderson argued that an advocacy group was needed to work directly with Memphis because, as he said, we all will contribute to the city's 1973 revenues with new taxes, and we should be trying to find out how the city plans to live up to its obligations. To that end, the Raleigh Community Council was formed in February of 1972, made up of members representing 13 clubs with a combined membership of 3,000 citizens. With Anderson as its president, the Community Council worked closely with city government to ensure that there was a smooth transition, while at the same time advocating for the needs of Raleigh residents.